They said it couldn't happen. Graceland being sold? That idea was unimaginable. For nearly 50 years, the mansion stood as a living museum, a shrine to Elvis Presley's legacy. Tourists traveled from every corner of the world to walk its iconic halls, to stand beside the bedazzled jumpsuits, and to leave tributes at the grave of a man who redefined music. But there was one place even the most devoted fans never saw. Beyond velvet ropes and display cases, behind a locked door at the top of the house, sat a room that no one dared to disturb. Untouched since Elvis's death, that attic was more than just a storage space. It was a silent vault of secrets. And now, in 2025, that vault has been opened. What was found inside didn't just surprise historians, it rattled them. Boxes filled with forgotten mementos turned into a revelation that felt almost too intimate to process. It wasn't the usual stash of stage-worn outfits or handwritten lyrics. Instead, what emerged felt like a whisper from the grave, something painfully human. It's not just about what was discovered, but why it stayed hidden for so long. Why now? Why was this moment chosen to finally unseal the truth? The moment everything changed was August 16, 1977. Inside the walls of his sanctuary, Elvis Presley was found unresponsive in his private bathroom. He was rushed from Graceland to Baptist Memorial Hospital. But within hours, headlines broke across the world. The king was gone. At only 42 years old, his passing stunned not only fans, but a generation that had grown up on his voice. Officially, the doctors blamed a cardiac issue. But almost immediately, questions began to swirl. Nothing felt quite right. The man who'd commanded every stage now seemed to have been betrayed by his own body. But was that really the full story? An autopsy revealed troubling details, indications of prolonged use of strong prescription medication. Yet before any clear analysis could be shared, Dr. Jerry Francisco, who wasn't even part of the official examination team, issued a baffling statement. No medications contributed to Elvis's death. That declaration threw the medical community into disbelief. To many, it felt like a smokescreen, a rushed defense to preserve an untarnished legacy. But the truth, as it often does, refused to stay buried. When the full toxicology report was released, it exposed a reality that fans had long feared. Elvis's system contained an alarming cocktail of medications, powerful sedatives, painkillers, and tranquilizers, far beyond safe thresholds. The list was staggering. Dilaudid, Quaaludes, Percodan, Demerol, codeine. It begged the question, how had things spiraled so far? And who was responsible for enabling it? If this man, adored by millions, had been quietly suffering, who was supposed to protect him? At the center of the storm stood Dr. George Nichopoulos, Dr. Nick, as he was famously called. Between 1975 and 1977, he wrote over 8,000 prescriptions for Elvis, covering a dizzying array of medications. Dr. Nick never denied it. In fact, he claimed it was all part of a strategy to shield Elvis from worse dangers. According to him, Elvis was already dependent, and supplying medication legally was the only way to keep him safe from the streets. Somehow, that defense worked. In a courtroom packed with tension, a jury chose not to hold him accountable for Elvis's death. But time has a way of circling back. By 1980, Dr. Nick was once again under the microscope, this time not only for Elvis, but for other celebrities he'd treated with the same leniency. Eventually, the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners had seen enough. In 1995, his license was permanently revoked. The official reason? A troubling, consistent pattern of reckless prescribing. Then came a twist no one saw coming. In 2020, author Sally A. Hodel introduced a new theory that rocked the Elvis world. Her book Destined to Die Young argued that Elvis's cause of death wasn't addiction. It was a cluster of hereditary heart conditions and chronic health struggles. According to her, The prescriptions weren't a self-destructive escape, but a desperate attempt to manage unimaginable pain. If that's true, it changes everything. Maybe Elvis wasn't giving up. Maybe he was trying to hang on, the only way he knew how. But if that's the case, why hide it? What secret was so devastating it had to be locked away in an attic for nearly 50 years? As the news spread that the attic had been opened, speculation exploded. Could there be personal medical records? Unseen letters? Proof of a diagnosis that was never shared publicly? The Presley family never spoke openly about what was up there. Now people are wondering, what did they know? And why did they choose silence? The mourning that followed Elvis's death wasn't just emotional, it was seismic. On the morning after his passing, nearly 100,000 fans surrounded Graceland, hoping to say goodbye. His body, dressed in a white suit and powder blue shirt, lay inside the mansion for public viewing. The line stretched for blocks. Some waited all night. On August 18th, the funeral began. 17 white Cadillacs led the procession through Memphis. It was theatrical, reverent, and tragic, just like Elvis himself. Famous faces joined the procession. James Brown wept openly. Priscilla Presley stood by with quiet strength. His father, Vernon, was visibly shaken. Lisa Marie clung to family. Elvis was buried beside his mother, Gladys, at Forest Hill Cemetery. It should have been the end of the story. But just days later, a disturbing event reignited fear. A group of men attempted to steal Elvis's coffin in a failed scheme that ended in charges and chaos. No one was hurt, but the message was impossible to ignore. Elvis, even in death, was a target. His father made a drastic move. The family quietly had both Elvis and Gladys reburied in the meditation garden at Graceland, protected by security and stone. Now, with the attic's secrets coming to light, the echoes of that past feel more urgent than ever. What truths were locked away, and why are they only being revealed now? In the shadow of the king's memory, the lines between myth and reality blur. And just when you think the last page of Elvis's story has been written, a new chapter opens. The moment the attic door creaked open, time itself seemed to pause. That forgotten space above Graceland, untouched since 1977, whispered secrets no one expected to hear. For decades, it had existed like a ghost overhead, always there, but never acknowledged. When archivists finally stepped into the dusty room, it wasn't with the flashing lights of the media or grand public declarations. It was a quiet reckoning, a respectful entry into a piece of history that had waited patiently for nearly half a century. And what lay beyond those locked doors wasn't just memorabilia, it was a deeply human story, preserved in silence. Tucked away in the corners were boxes, each thick with the weight of time. Dust lay like snow on top of them, untouched, undisturbed. Inside those boxes were remnants of a life the world thought it knew. Scribbled lyrics on torn napkins, some half-finished, some crossed out with frustration, hinted at the creative storm constantly brewing inside Elvis's mind. Letters, both romantic and heartbreaking, painted a portrait of a man torn between his larger-than-life persona and deeply private emotions. One bundle of correspondence, never opened, bore the dreams of fans who had written to their idol, unaware that their words had never been read. Each envelope carried a timestamp from a different corner of the world, proof that Elvis didn't just belong to America, he belonged to everyone. There was something innocent among the relics too. Childhood toys, including a worn-out toy car and a pair of small shoes with Elvis's initials barely visible on the soles. These simple items grounded the legend. They reminded everyone that before the fame, the chaos, and the king-sized persona, there was a little boy who once dreamed in silence, far from the spotlight. Then came the stage outfits, brilliantly preserved, their rhinestones still catching the light, and early posters from his earliest concerts, where his name sat humbly beneath other acts. Those posters didn't just advertise a show, they captured the genesis of a cultural revolution. But the item that sent chills through the room was a leather jacket. It wasn't flashy or performance-ready. It was worn, soft, and well-loved. Inside its inner pocket was a small note written in Elvis's own hand. "Wear this when you need to disappear." The message was brief, mysterious, and deeply personal. It hinted at something unspoken, a yearning to escape, maybe just for a moment, from the enormous weight of fame. That single line sparked new questions. Did Elvis ever truly want to walk away from it all? Did the man behind the legend long for a quieter life? And just when it seemed the attic had given all it had, the true revelation was found. One unassuming box sat tucked beneath a pile of faded books. Its label, barely legible, read, "Practice Sessions, 1976. It looked like nothing special, but inside were reel-to-reel tapes, untouched, unplayed for nearly 5 decades. The room fell silent as they were carefully threaded into a machine. Then came the voice. Not the polished, confident crooner known to millions, but something more vulnerable, more raw. These weren't polished studio sessions. These were intimate rehearsals, captured between moments. Elvis laughing at missed notes, humming melodies, talking softly to himself between takes. There were even candid exchanges between him and his bandmates, revealing a man still searching for perfection even after years on top. The recordings weren't just a sonic time capsule, they were emotional. They painted a picture of a man both powerful and uncertain, full of brilliance but still grounded by. One track caught everyone's attention. It wasn't a song he'd ever performed live or released. It was rough, just a melody and a few haunting lyrics, but it felt like a farewell. And in that moment, listeners weren't hearing Elvis the icon. They were hearing Elvis the man, flawed, fragile, real. It begs the question, how many layers of Elvis have been lost in time? Was the image of the jumpsuit-clad king all we were meant to see? Or was there a deeper soul trying to break through? The attic answered that question with quiet certainty. There was always more depth, more emotion, more truth. And we were never supposed to see it, until now. This hidden room, long kept away from public view, didn't just hold artifacts, it held confessions. And the timing of its unveiling couldn't have been more striking. Just months after a legal storm nearly saw Graceland auctioned off to a shadowy investor, the Presley estate seemed to reclaim its voice. Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, had stood up in court to protect her family's legacy from what she claimed was a fraudulent attack. She described the attempted sale as a scheme, backed by forged documents, designed to rob the world of something irreplaceable. Had the court not stepped in, Graceland may have fallen into the hands of strangers. And the attic, the very heart of this mystery, might have been picked apart, sold piece by piece to the highest bidder. But fate intervened. The judge not only blocked the sale, he called Graceland a national treasure, one whose loss would cause immeasurable harm. That ruling didn't just protect property, it safeguarded history. And so here we are, standing in a moment Elvis himself may have never imagined, where his most guarded memories are now breathing in the open air, connecting us not to the king, but to the man he was underneath the crown. The attic has spoken, and what it's saying still echoes in every corner of Graceland. In the stillness of that dusty attic, behind the rhinestones and glory, something unshakably human whispered through the silence. There, among the forgotten reels and moth-eaten costumes, was Elvis, unmasked and unguarded. Not the legend who lit up Vegas stages or thrilled screaming crowds, but the man who still searched for peace in melodies. One particular tape carried that ache louder than the rest. It was raw, just his voice, stripped of fanfare, trembling as it carried the weight of every sleepless night and broken promise. No backing band, no polished production, just Elvis singing unchained melody like it was his last breath. And in many ways, it was. The emotion cracked like glass under pressure. His voice, once invincible, now betrayed the pain of someone aware that the end was drawing near. That single performance, recorded mere months before he was gone, wasn't just a song. It was a whispered goodbye disguised as a melody. And that was only the beginning. Box after box opened like chapters in a private diary no one was meant to read. Letters from fans poured in, thousands of them. Some were from young soldiers overseas, others from grieving parents who found comfort in his music. One letter, written in 1976, pleaded with him to rest, to abandon his tour for the sake of his health. But it remained sealed, never read. Just like the warning signs so many ignored. It makes you wonder, did the king hear the cries for help echoing through his fan base? Or was he too lost in his own noise to listen? Buried beneath glitzy capes and stage props were relics that told a different story. A teddy bear, torn and faded from his early days in Tupelo. A well-worn Bible given to him by his mother, its pages dog-eared with love and hope. And a high school yearbook scribbled with goofy drawings and signatures of kids who knew him long before fame swallowed his name. These weren't museum pieces. They weren't curated for the public. They were sacred fragments of a life desperately clinging to normalcy. Lisa Marie once admitted, "It's comforting. I can come here anytime and rummage through the boxes." That simple statement stripped away the illusion and revealed the attic for what it truly was. Not storage, but sanctuary. A place where the myth stepped aside and the man quietly emerged. For a moment, all the glitter fades. The cheers go silent, and you're left face to face with someone beautifully imperfect. Through those memories preserved in dust and time, the king of rock and roll became something more vulnerable, more relatable, more human. But that vulnerability only raised more questions. If these deeply personal treasures stayed hidden for decades, what else is buried in the shadows of his legacy? What truths were never told? And then, like a storm of disbelief, the conspiracy theories returned. Ever since 1977, people have insisted Elvis didn't really die, that he escaped the pressure, the fame, the prison of being Elvis. Some claimed they saw him boarding a plane at Memphis Airport under the name John Burroughs, a pseudonym he was rumored to use. Others swore they spotted him grabbing a bite in a Michigan diner. Then came the books, like Orion, telling eerily familiar tales of a superstar faking his death to live freely. It wasn't long before tapes surfaced, voices that sounded like him, confessing, singing, even claiming to be alive in hiding. Most were debunked, exposed as clever hoaxes or impersonators. But for many, believing he faked his death was easier than accepting that he could fall so far, so fast. Even today, theories linger. Some people are convinced he's living as Bob Joyce, a preacher with a powerful voice and uncanny resemblance. The evidence is shaky, the logic flawed, but the belief? Unshakable. Because in truth, people don't want to let go. They don't want to believe the king was mortal. And now, with these attic discoveries, closure for some fans feels possible. But for others, the mystery has only deepened. If these boxes, so personal, so raw, were hidden all this time, what else might be out there, waiting to be found? Despite the speculation and fantasy, one thing is clear. Elvis Presley's life was far bigger than any tabloid story or viral rumor. His impact was seismic. He wasn't just a star. He was the sun around which American music revolved. From chart-topping records to box office hits, from military service to global stardom, he lived a life too large for one man to carry alone. But the pressure to remain untouchable took its toll. And as we sift through the keepsakes, listen to the whispered confessions in old tapes and read letters that never reached him in time, we're reminded that the brightest stars cast the deepest shadows. Maybe now, at last, Elvis can rest in the light. Or maybe, just maybe, his story isn't quite over. Let us know which discovery shook you the most. The teddy bear? The gospel hymn? Or the letter he may have never read? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more stories where the music ends but the legend continues.